Can you see anything? The visitor asked in the dark. Pressing his eye to the hole, the archaeologist whispered back, "Yes, wonderful things." Beyond that sealed stone doorway lay a chamber crammed with gold and treasure, untouched by human hands for more than 3,000 years. It was the burial tomb of a pharaoh so obscure that historians had very nearly forgotten he had ever existed at all. His story began around 1332 BC, when a fragile boy of roughly 9 years old was crowned king over all of Egypt. He is known as Tutankhamun, and the vast, ancient empire he suddenly inherited had already been thrown into deep religious upheaval. To understand this mysterious boy, we must first meet the man most scholars believe was his father, the pharaoh Akhenaten. Akhenaten had done the unthinkable. He sidelined Egypt's ancient gods and promoted the worship of a single deity, the sun disk Aten. He abandoned the old capital, built a brand new city in the empty desert, and turned his back on the mighty priesthood of Amen. For years, Egypt's traditional temples stood neglected, their revenues cut off and their once powerful priests stripped of influence. When Akhenaten died, the kingdom was left fractured, its religion overturned, its treasury strained, and, records suggest, its foreign allies drifting away. Into all this turmoil stepped a small, sickly boy, barely tall enough to hold the golden royal crook and flail. DNA studies published in 2010 suggest Tutankhamun was Akhenaten's son, born to one of the pharaoh's own biological sisters. That extreme royal inbreeding, many historians believe, may help explain the physical frailty that would haunt the boy throughout his short life. At his coronation, the child still bore the name Tutankhaten, a title meaning the living image of the god Aten. But a boy of 9 could not realistically govern an empire alone, and two powerful men stood close behind his throne. The first was an aging, shrewd court official named Ai, the second, a hardened and ambitious army general called Hormheb. Under their guidance, the young royal court began, piece by piece, to dismantle much of what Akhenaten had built. Within just a few years, the boy king's very name was changed, from Tutankhaten to the now famous Tutankhamun. The switch appears deliberate and political. It honored Amen, the old king of the gods, and rejected his father's revolution. A great restoration decree declared that the temples had fallen to ruin, and that the long-neglected gods of Egypt were now restored. The desert capital was abandoned once more, and Egypt's court returned to the ancient, familiar cities of Memphis and Thebes. Priests reclaimed their temples, craftsmen recarved the defaced sacred images, and the old rhythms of Egyptian worship slowly returned to the land. Whether the boy himself truly willed these sweeping changes, or simply signed whatever his advisors placed before him, we can never know. He was married to a young woman named Ankhesenamun, a daughter of Akhenaten, and therefore almost certainly his own half-sister. Such royal marriages were common in ancient Egypt, meant to keep the sacred divine bloodline within the ruling family. The couple appeared together on a gilded throne found inside his tomb, the young queen anointing her seated husband. It remains one of the most intimate and tender images to survive from anywhere in the entire ancient world. Yet behind all the shimmering gold, the young king's own fragile body was steadily failing him. Examinations of his mummy reveal a deformed clubfoot, a degenerative bone disorder, and traces of malaria in his remains. More than 130 walking sticks were buried alongside him, and some carvings even show him seated while drawing his bow. This was no mighty warrior pharaoh of legend, but a fragile young man who may have struggled simply to stand and walk. Around 1323 BC, after roughly a decade on the throne, Tutankhamun died, still only about 18 years of age. Exactly how the young king died remains, even today, one of history's most debated and unsolved mysteries. His mummy shows a badly broken leg that may have turned infected, perhaps from a fall or a hunting accident. Some scholars point to malaria, others to his many inherited illnesses. A few researchers once even suspected murder. No surviving record names a killer, and no evidence proves any crime, so the real truth may simply be lost forever. What is certain is that his death came suddenly, striking before a proper royal tomb could be prepared for him. He was buried instead in a small, cramped chamber, a tomb that some experts believe was never intended for a king. Its painted walls were hastily finished, and strange dark spots on the plaster suggest to many experts that the burial was rushed. Inside, his body was laid within 3 nested coffins, one set inside the next, the innermost crafted from solid, gleaming gold. Over his face rested the now famous death mask, roughly 10 kilograms of gold, inlaid with deep blue lapis and colored glass. His preserved organs were sealed within delicate canopic jars, and his many treasures were piled around him for the afterlife. Chariots, thrones, weapons, jewelry, food, and furniture, more than 5,000 individual objects were packed tightly into that tiny tomb. Then the final doorway was sealed shut, and the boy king Tutankhamun was left alone to journey into eternity. But here is precisely where this forgotten boy king's strange, almost unbelievable fortune truly begins to unfold. His successors, first the old official Eye, and then the general Horemheb, worked to erase the entire Amarna period. Tutankhamun's name was left off the later official Egyptian king lists, as though he had never reigned at all. Later builders dumped construction rubble over his tomb's hidden entrance, and its precise location was, in time, forgotten. That very act of erasure, in a strange twist of irony, would ultimately become the boy king's greatest salvation. While the grand tombs of Egypt's most famous pharaohs were robbed and stripped bare, his lay quietly hidden and overlooked. For more than 3,000 long years, the forgotten boy king lay undisturbed beneath the sands of the Valley of the Kings. Then, in 1922, a determined British archaeologist named Howard Carter arrived, financed by the wealthy English aristocrat Lord Carnarvon. Carter had already searched the barren valley for years, convinced that one last royal tomb still remained undiscovered. In November 1922, his workers uncovered a single hidden step cut into the bedrock, and then, below it, a sealed doorway. When Carter finally breached the ancient wall and raised his flickering candle, gold glittered back at him from the darkness. It was the most complete and intact royal tomb ever found in Egypt, a discovery that stunned the entire world. But almost immediately, a far darker story began to spread across the newspapers, the chilling legend of the pharaoh's curse. A few months after the tomb was opened, Lord Carnarvon died in Cairo after an infected mosquito bite on his cheek. Sensational newspapers claimed an ancient curse had struck down anyone who dared disturb the sleeping boy king's rest. In truth, most people who entered the tomb went on to live long, ordinary lives. Carter himself died about 17 years later. Scientists suspect the scattered deaths were coincidence, or perhaps ancient mold, sealed away for millennia within the airless chamber. The curse was only a myth, yet it transformed a forgotten boy king into one of the most famous pharaohs who ever lived. Today his golden mask draws millions of visitors, and modern DNA science still teases new secrets from his fragile bones. A boy who ruled in weakness and obscurity became, in death, truly immortal, his young face now known across the entire world. Next time, we open another sealed tomb from the distant past, so subscribe now, and step with us into history's buried mysteries.